She never really loved you. She observed you. She studied your every reaction, memorized every single one of your weaknesses, and then she turned your own empathy into her personal control panel. She knew the exact story to tell you, didn't she? The one that would make you lean in, that would ignite that protective instinct inside you, making you want to save her, to fight for her. But here's the hard truth. It was never about creating a connection. It was always about gaining control. Remember that moment she cried in your arms? Or the time she looked you in the eyes and whispered, "You're the only one I can trust"? That wasn't love. That was the setup. She was an expert at building an illusion of intimacy. It was always fast, incredibly intense, and deeply emotional. Why? Because it was designed to make you skip logic, to bypass that gut feeling telling you something was off. It was designed to get you addicted to the very poison that was destroying you. What you mistook for vulnerability was actually a manufactured weakness. What you thought was trust was nothing more than strategic storytelling. And what you believed was love? It was a psychological prison, built with the bars of your own guilt and your own hope. By the time you felt that knot in your stomach, the one telling you something was deeply wrong, it was already too late. You weren't just in love with her. You were in love with the idea of fixing her. This isn't just a story about heartbreak. This is about covert psychological warfare that's been cleverly disguised as affection. And it is far more common than you might think. In this video, we're not just going to expose the tactics of a covert narcissist. We are going to break the spell she cast on your mind. If any of what I just said felt uncomfortably familiar, I need you to know you are not alone. What you went through isn't a reflection of your weakness. It's proof that you were subjected to psychological manipulation so sophisticated that it looked and felt just like love. But once you learn to see the playbook, you can never unsee it. So stick with me, because over the next few minutes, we're going to pull back the curtain on every hidden tactic, every silent weapon, and every single reason why the pain you're carrying was never your fault to begin with. If you value emotional honesty and you're ready to understand the darker side of human connection, go ahead and subscribe now. Let's start rebuilding your strength together. The unseen enemy. You were never taught to see her coming. Society only warns us about the loud ones, the arrogant, flamboyant, obviously toxic narcissists. We're told to watch out for the person who shouts, who demands, who explodes in rage. But the most dangerous kind of narcissist doesn't raise her voice. She whispers. She enters your life looking like the answer to a prayer, like everything you've ever wanted. She's soft-spoken, thoughtful, maybe even a little fragile. She doesn't dominate a room. She disarms it. She doesn't talk over you. She listens with an intensity that makes you feel seen in a way you've never experienced before. She doesn't take power from you by force. She makes you want to hand it over. This isn't the kind of narcissist you read about in most self-help blogs. This is the covert type, the one who hides behind what we call mirrored needs. She becomes a perfect reflection of your deepest desires. She senses you're a man who craves peace, so she becomes the embodiment of gentleness. You tell her you long for emotional depth, and suddenly she's opening up about her deepest wounds. You mention you're tired of surface-level relationships, and she paints herself as the one person who is truly different. She studies you like an artist studies a subject, and then she becomes the exact masterpiece you've been so desperate to find. But it's an illusion. It's not who she is. It's who she knows you need her to be. This is the core of covert manipulation. It doesn't work by pushing against your boundaries. It works by sliding right underneath them. It's a strategy designed to bypass your logical mind, to make you ignore the red flags, and to plug directly into the emotional center of your being. Because let's be honest, when someone appears to be bleeding in front of you, your first instinct isn't to question their motives, it's to rescue them. And the moment you step into the role of the rescuer, you stop realizing you're actually being robbed. That initial rush you felt, that intense emotional high, that wasn't the beginning of love. It was psychological bait. It was a vulnerability trap, meticulously designed to feel sacred, while it was actually binding you to someone who had no intention of healing, only of feeding off your energy. By the time you start to question things, you're already in too deep. You've already convinced yourself of the narrative. She's just misunderstood. She's just been through so much. She just needs more time and patience from me. But you're not protecting her from her wounds. You're protecting your own belief that what you felt, that initial connection, was real. Weapon 1, manufactured vulnerability. She didn't wait weeks or months to open up to you. It probably started early on, maybe in the second or third conversation. You remember it. The tears in her voice, a trembling confession, a heartbreaking story of betrayal, childhood wounds, or the monsters in her past who hurt her. And in that moment, your heart did something incredibly dangerous. It flew open. Not because she earned your trust, but because she bled for you. This is the tactic of manufactured vulnerability. It's not the slow, mutual unfolding of genuine emotional intimacy. It's a calculated shortcut. It's a hack that skips the necessary steps of building trust, spending time together, and sharing experiences. And instead, it forces an immediate sense of closeness through shared pain. Specifically, her pain. She didn't share those deep, dark secrets because she trusted you. She shared them because she needed to get you hooked, fast. Most healthy individuals wait to share their deepest scars. They need to feel safe first. But the covert narcissist knows that if she shows you her wounds early on, your instinct will be to rush in and play the medic. And in the process of bandaging her up, you'll inevitably lower your own defenses. You'll stop analyzing, you'll stop observing, and you'll start protecting. You thought you were being led into her inner world, but you weren't. You were being recruited to heal her, recruited to prove you were different from all the others, and recruited to work tirelessly to earn the version of her that only ever showed up in brief, tantalizing glimpses, the sweet, broken girl who needed you. But what you didn't see was the subtle shift in the dynamic. You weren't falling in love. You were stepping into a precast role. The psychologist Carl Jung wrote about this archetype, the wounded healer. This is the person who focuses on healing others as a way to avoid confronting their own pain. The man who believes he is saving someone, when in reality, he is slowly losing himself. The covert narcissist is a master at exploiting this. She hands you her wounds, not for healing, but for you to own. From that point on, her trauma becomes the excuse for everything. When she lashes out, it's because of her past. When she disappears on you emotionally, it's her defense mechanisms kicking in. When she crosses a clear boundary, it's your job to be the one who understands. You're no longer just dating her. You're managing her. You're justifying her behavior. And here's the truly cruel part. The stories she told you might not even have been lies. That's what makes this so convincing. Her trauma may have been real, but its purpose in the relationship wasn't connection. It was leverage. You weren't building a partnership. You were inheriting a case file, one that absolved her of all accountability and made you responsible for every emotional explosion that was yet to come. This isn't vulnerability. It's weaponized storytelling, and it's only the first weapon in her arsenal. Weapon 2. Emotional hostage tactics. At first, her emotions just seemed raw, unfiltered, and deeply human. You probably told yourself she was just a sensitive soul, maybe even in a beautiful way. But it wasn't long before that sensitivity started to turn your entire life into an emotional minefield. You found yourself constantly on edge, never knowing what might set her off. A glance at your phone that lasted a second too long, a text message you didn't reply to instantly, a subtle change in your tone of voice, and suddenly, she was crying, or giving you the silent treatment, or trembling with a disappointment that felt crushing. In the beginning, you rushed to fix it. Of course you did. You're a good man, and that's what you've been taught to do. Protect, soothe, and take responsibility. But you have to understand, this wasn't a normal emotional dynamic between two partners. This was emotional hostage-taking. And whether you realized it at the time or not, you were already in a negotiation with a psychological terrorist. Because these emotional displays weren't genuine reactions. They were tactics. The covert narcissist learns early in her life that emotions are not just for expression, they are tools. A well-timed tear can buy instant forgiveness. A sudden, dramatic breakdown can completely reset the conversation and shift the blame. A quiet, cold withdrawal can starve you of affection so effectively that you'll come crawling back, apologizing, even when you did absolutely nothing wrong. You're no longer in a relationship at this point. You're living inside a system where her emotional state dictates your every move. Your peace of mind becomes entirely dependent on her approval. And so, you adapt. You start to shrink yourself to fit into the cramped space she allows. You begin speaking more softly. You learn to avoid certain topics. You start trying to predict her moods like a meteorologist predicts the weather, becoming fluent in her emotional language, even when it constantly contradicts itself. And here is the most devastating part of it all. You start to believe that you are the problem. That is the twisted genius of emotional hostage tactics. They completely flip the frame of reality. If she's upset, it's because you must have done something to cause it. If she's distant, you must be failing her as a partner. If she's cold, you must not be trying hard enough to warm her up. But none of it is true. What you're dealing with isn't a loving partnership. It's a system of control wearing the mask of emotional intimacy. And the more traditionally masculine you are, the more you feel that innate drive to protect, to fix, to provide, to make her happy, the deeper the trap becomes. She doesn't overpower you with force. She manipulates you into overpowering yourself. Her pain becomes your mission. Her moods become your responsibility. Her instability becomes your full-time, unpaid job. And it is never enough. Because no matter how many fires you manage to put out, she will always find a way to light another one. Not because she truly wants peace, but because in the middle of the chaos, in the fire, is where she feels most powerful. This is how the covert narcissist breaks even the strongest of men. Not by confronting them head-on, but by convincing them that their strength is best used to save her, even if it means destroying themselves in the process. Weapon 3, gaslighting and reality rewriting. She doesn't need to scream. She doesn't have to debate you. She doesn't even fight fair, because she has a much more powerful weapon. She rewrites reality, one quiet conversation at a time. You'll say something like, "But you promised we would talk about this tonight." And she'll look at you with calm, steady eyes and say, "I never said that. You must have misunderstood." You recall a specific moment with perfect clarity, but she'll insist it happened in a completely different way. And the more certain you are of your own memory, the more serene and confident she becomes in her version of events. That's when you feel it. It's not anger. It's not even confusion. It's something far worse. A chilling, sinking feeling of self-doubt. Gaslighting doesn't arrive with blaring sirens and flashing lights. It comes dressed in phrases that sound reasonable on the surface. You're overreacting. You always twist things. Maybe you're just being too sensitive right now. At first, you defend your position, but slowly, subtly, conversation by conversation, you start to question yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You second-guess your own memories. You start analyzing your tone, your motives, your own sanity. Her version of events begins to feel more real than your own lived experience. This is how identity erosion begins. It doesn't happen in one big, dramatic moment. It happens in thousands of tiny, invisible edits. It's every moment where your reality was subtly rewritten to protect hers. Eventually, you split into two people. There's the real you, the one who feels and thinks and knows, and then there's the performing you, the one who shows up to the relationship. You have to create this second self because expressing your real emotions has become too dangerous. So you adapt. You enter a state of psychological survival. You find yourself nodding along just to avoid a conflict, agreeing with things you know are untrue just to avoid the madness, smiling on the outside while you are dying on the inside. This isn't just her being sensitive. This is strategic, psychological warfare. The psychologist Carl Jung warned us about this exact phenomenon. He said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." The covert narcissist doesn't just resist her own shadow, her own flaws, her guilt, her shame. She outsources it. She denies her own guilt and makes you carry it. She suppresses her own shame and buries you under it. She cannot face her own darkness, so she paints it onto the person who is closest to her. You might even start reacting in ways that aren't like you, becoming more irritable, more defensive, more confused. And then she'll use that as proof that you're the unstable one. You end up apologizing for things you didn't even do because she has so successfully cast you as the villain in a story you never even auditioned for. And that is the final, terrifying stage of gaslighting. You begin to police yourself. You're not just walking on eggshells anymore. You've become the one who lays them down in front of your own feet. Her silence becomes your truth. Her perception becomes law. And your own mind? It becomes the prison she never had to build, because you constructed it for her, brick by brick, lie by lie. Weapon 4. Performance addiction. In the beginning, her praise felt like magic. A soft smile when you gave her the right compliment. The way her eyes would light up when you said the perfect thing. That sudden, intoxicating warmth after hours, or even days, of emotional coldness. You started to crave it. Before you knew it, you needed it. But here's the trap: she wasn't giving you love. She was giving you permission to feel worthy. And just like that, you were on stage, auditioning every single day for the role of good enough. This is a psychological loop called performance addiction. It's a devastating system where love is treated as a reward, not a right. Affection is given out sporadically, strategically, and only in doses just large enough to keep you chasing it. You become addicted to the incredible highs precisely because the lows feel so much like punishment and failure. And you find yourself willing to do anything, say anything, or be anything to get back to that moment where you felt, just for a second, that you were finally seen, finally valued. But here is the hard truth you have to accept. You were never being seen. You were being evaluated. Her standards shifted constantly and without warning. The thing that made her smile yesterday might earn you cold silence today. What felt like major progress in the relationship one night could be framed as a complete failure by morning. She was always moving the target. Why? Because if you ever actually hit it consistently, the game would be over. And she doesn't want a partnership. She wants control. Control disguised as admiration. Control disguised as helping you grow. Control disguised as your own noble desire to be a better man for her. You start thinking, if I just listen a little more closely, if I just improve this one thing about myself, if I can just figure out how to stop making her upset, then maybe, just maybe, she'll love me like she did in the very beginning. But that's the psychological trick. She never did. That initial approval was the bait. And now, you're trapped in a cycle of constant self-critique. Not to become a better man for yourself, but to win back the approval of a version of her that only exists in your memory. A version that only reappears when she wants something from you. She doesn't offer consistent love. She offers glimpses of love, just enough to reset your hope, just enough to keep you investing, to keep you performing. And over time, you don't even realize what's happened. You're not a partner anymore. You're a performer in an invisible, never-ending audition, desperately trying to earn something that should have been given freely from the start. Weapon 5. The emotional one-way street. You didn't just become her partner. You became her on-call therapist, her crisis manager, her personal emotional sponge. You were expected to absorb every ounce of her anxiety, frustration, and drama. But the moment it was your turn, the moment you needed support, she was suddenly tired, busy, or completely overwhelmed. You learned the rules of this economy very quickly. Her emotions were urgent and valid. Yours were an inconvenience. This is the emotional blackmail economy. It's a system where you are expected to give endlessly, while she gives only strategically. Your emotional labor is a requirement of the relationship. Hers is a rare gift that you have to earn. She demands that you show up for her fully, listen with your complete attention, and support her through every single storm, no matter how self-created it is. But when you're the one who's hurt, when you're tired, when you simply need space or comfort, you're accused of being too sensitive, too dramatic, or not supportive enough of her needs. And then she pulls out the final weapon in this exchange. She looks at you with wounded eyes and says the words, "If you really loved me, you would." That sentence is a loaded gun. It isn't a request. It's an accusation. It's designed to make your devotion feel conditional, as if true love is proven not by honesty and mutual respect, but by how much you're willing to sacrifice yourself. So you do it. You start doing things that go against your own values. You break your own boundaries. You silence your own voice, not out of genuine love, but out of fear. The fear of being seen as cold, as selfish, as not enough. This isn't a relationship. It's emotional extortion. You become so accustomed to carrying the weight of her pain that you start to feel guilty for having any of your own. You begin to believe that your needs are a sign of immaturity, that emotional starvation is actually what emotional strength looks like, that being the bigger person means you have to die a quiet death inside. But nobody tells you that love is not supposed to feel like servitude, and needing support doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The final weapons: assassination and isolation. She never had to attack your strengths directly because she was an expert at quiet erosion. It started with what I call competence assassination. She never said you were stupid. Instead, she offered helpful suggestions on things you've been doing your whole life. She'd gently correct the way you spoke, offer a better way to handle a work situation, or question a small decision you made. It was all wrapped in concern. "I'm just trying to help," she'd say, smiling. With every helpful hint, a piece of your confidence was chipped away. You used to trust your gut. Now you second-guess your every move, seeking her approval not out of respect, but out of a conditioned fear of getting it wrong. At the same time, she put the isolation protocol into effect. She never told you, "Don't see your friends." She didn't have to. She just made you pay for it emotionally every time you did. You'd come home from a night out with your buddies to find her unusually quiet or sad. A fun family event would be followed by a fight that seemed to come out of nowhere. You were being trained. Every connection outside of her came with an emotional tax. So you started to choose her peace over your people. You skipped the hangouts and canceled plans, not because you wanted to, but because the drama that followed just wasn't worth it. She slowly became your entire world, and once she was, her control was absolute. Breaking free. Your power was never in fixing her. At some point in this process, you stop existing as a person and start functioning as an emotional appliance. Always on, always available, but no longer truly seen or needed for who you are. Just there to respond, to absorb, to perform. This is when the real collapse happens, not with a bang, but with a quiet internal folding. You feel guilt for wanting love, shame for your own reactions, and a deep sense of failure for not being strong enough to make her happy. But that feeling of failure was installed in you, piece by piece. You can't fix her. Her operating system isn't broken. It's designed this way, to extract energy, not to share it. The love you poured in wasn't healing her. It was just fueling the machine. And that is the hardest, most important truth you will ever accept. Love cannot save her, and your sacrifice will only destroy you. Your freedom does not begin when she changes. It begins the moment you stop participating, the moment you stop playing the hero, the moment you stop chasing the high, the moment you stop accepting emotional crumbs and calling it a meal. This is your path forward. It's called emotional sovereignty. It's the power to feel, to think, to choose, and to heal without waiting for anyone's permission. It means recognizing that your pain is valid, your needs are not excessive, and your boundaries are not flaws. They are the shape of your soul trying to stand up again, and you must let it stand. The goal was never to be her rescuer. The goal is now to reclaim the warrior inside of you that she worked so hard to silence. Not the man who tried to fix her, but the man who remembered himself. The man who walked out of the fog, looked at the wreckage, and still had the courage to choose to rebuild. Your power was never in fixing her. It was always, and still is, in finally choosing you. If this video spoke a truth you've felt deep in your bones, subscribe. Not just for more content, but for more clarity. Because your healing started the moment you were able to see this for what it truly was. Now, the real work begins.